you see the 2008 financial crisis that happens in
I think Adam is interrupted. Let us wait for him if he can rejoin back.
Ms. Ghana, if you could make a call to the presenter and see what challenges he's facing, if you have his number.
In the meantime, I have one message. I think the third presenter had some emergency. I don't know what happened to Binyam. He was here during the welcoming session. I saw him, but I'm told that he faced some emergency and he left out. So perhaps my suggestion is if the fourth presenter is around, better if you try to be ready so that we'll have the fourth presentation, which was planned to be held after the discussion. That is by Dr. Ababa from Dr. Abtam Ababa from the Marcos University. So if Dr. Ababa is, Dr. Abtam is around, we'll have that paper before having the discussion. If Adam is going to join us back, perhaps.
Ms. Ghana, did you manage to make a call, Ms. Ghana?
I'm trying to contact Adam, but his phone is not working at the moment, but I will keep trying.
So we should attend to what Dr. Maro has been saying and move on to the fourth presenter.
Yeah, Dr. Abtam, are you around?
Yes, let's go. He's back.
Shall I continue?
He's back, I guess.
Shall I start my presentation?
Yeah, you can continue, Adam.
Okay, thank you.
You can continue. Adam, please continue. Are you muted or you cannot hear?
Please allow me to share my PowerPoint.
Yes, already shared. It's already shared. I think Adam is already back, so Dr. Altam, apologies. We'll have your presentation after Adam finished, all right?
Okay, no problem.
I think Adam was back. Adam, can you hear me?
I think he's out again.
He's out again. Okay, Dr. Altam.
Yeah, so let's proceed with Dr. Altam.
Dr. Altam, you can share the slide and you can
Okay.
continue. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem at all. Okay. Thank you very much for giving this chance to present my paper. My paper the research title is Green Supply Chain Management Practice, Pressure, and Performance with reference to Ethiopia laser and laser products. So my presentation will start, I will give you some highlight on the issue and statement of the problem, research question, methodology, result discussion, and finally, I will present my finding and recommendation. Yeah, as you know, sustainability and environmental issue is one of the most pressing concern for this time for government, environmental conscious business organization to promote sustainability in the world. So manufacturing business activity can pose significant threat to the environment in terms of different emissions in different forms of pollutions. So because of these pollutions, manufacturing companies in the world have found themselves receiving different pressure from internal as well as external stakeholders to conduct environmental friendly operations. So many research reveals that environmental impact is occur at different stages of product life cycle from different sides, from resource extraction up to the end of disposals. So in the sense, green supply chain management is focused on minimizing environmental impact forward as well as reverse flows of supply chains by creating economic value and low cost for manufacturing company. So when you talk about green supply chain means the involvement of environmental thinking into supply chain management from extraction of raw material up to the final product to the customers or end of useful life of the product. So manufacturing sector, particularly the leather industry in Ethiopia, plays a key role in terms of contribution of GDP, employment, as well as for export. However, these sectors has been identified one of the generator for air, wastewater, solid, and different kinds of environmental pollutions. Because of the above evidence, leather industry sector in Ethiopia has created increased pressure from local as well as international stakeholders to minimize their environmental pollutions. So many research postulates that manufacturer companies can overcome their environmental pressure by integrating their environmental concern into supply chain management practice. As a result of this, manufacturing industry in particular, they need to proactive in their strategy to manage their environmental impact of their activities. So the main purpose of this study is to examine what is a driver for implementing this green supply chain management practice and how is the current status of this practice in Ethiopia in leather industry, and what is the impact of this practice on organizational performance in terms of operational as well as environmental performance. So what is the reason behind for conducting this research? Actually, I do have some reason for conducting this research. The first one is after critically review the previous studies, it provides significant knowledge gap. The first one is the existing research has not provided sufficient conclusive evidence on the relationship between green practice and organizational performance. To explain this, contradict, some researchers found that the implementation of green practice has positive effect on organizational performance in terms of operational as well as environmental performance. On contradict, some researchers found that the implementation of green practice has no significant effect on organizational performance. So this research side to provide clear picture on the relationship between green supply chain management practice and organizational performance. Second one is different scholars have operationalized green supply chain management construct differently. The previous study do not cover adequately all aspects of these constructs of supply chain. So this study tried to consider all dimensions in supply chain. And the third one is this concept is recent, especially in Ethiopia context in developed countries. This concept is remain unclear and a new concept. Most research has been conducted in this issue is in developed countries. And the other one is identification of driver in green supply chain management is one of the popular topic in literature. So it is necessary to check whether it's unclear whether all stakeholders is drive solely or collectively motivated for the implementation of green supply chain management. So these are some of the motivation or knowledge gaps in literatures. So from this, it is confirmed that further research is needed to address this knowledge gap, what I have already mentioned. So as far as the research and knowledge is concerned, no study has been conducted in Ethiopia context to investigate the structural linkage between driver practice and performance in manufacturing sectors. So this study tried to address what are the drivers for green supply chain management implementation, how is the practice as well as the performance in green supply chain management in empirically. So I have already developed around 5 objectives to examine the drivers factors affecting green supply chain practice, the current status of green supply chain management in Ethiopia context, and to examine the effects of this green supply chain management practice on environmental and operational performance, and finally try to identify the challenge faced by Ethiopian leather industries while implementing green supply chain management practice. So this is a conceptual framework after extensively reviewing different literature. So the first part shows the relationship between driver with practice, and second it shows the structural linkage between practice with performance. I have developed around 7 hypotheses. The first 5 is driver with organizational adaptations of green supply chain management practice, and the 6 and 7 is the hypothesis green supply chain management practice has positive effect on environmental and operational performance. The methodology, what I have applied for this research design, both descriptive and explanatory research design, and the research approach is more quantitative in nature, and the data source is primary. It was collected from top and middle levels of managers, and the questionnaire was developed through closed-ended question in 5-point Likert scales. And this is a summary of the sampling design and questionnaire despite the target population is leather and leather product industry in Ethiopia, the registered one, and sample is top and middle levels of managers from different departments, and 301 questionnaires was ultimately collected from these target respondents. The method of data analysis method, actually the first research objective was addressed through descriptive statistics, and the second one is also descriptive statistics. The third and the fourth objective was addressed through structural equation model, and the fifth objective was addressed through descriptive statistics. So when I come to the result and discussion part, actually the first was addressed through regression analysis. All assumption has been checked and it met the assumption. And from this regression table, we can find that senior management and government issue has significant effect on the adoptions of green supply chain management practice, whereas employees and competitors have no significant effect on the adoptions of green supply chain, but the customers have negative effect on significant, but it's a negative effect on the adoptions of green supply chain management practice. And when we see the extent of green practice, actually the internal environment management, eco-design, and green manufacture has highly implemented or highly initiated in Ethiopia context, whereas grid distribution in cooperation with customers and reverse logistics has evidenced low implementation in Ethiopia leather industries. And the third objective is actually the effects of green supply chain management practice on organizational performance. So before running the structure equation model, exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis was conducted. So the exploratory factor analysis is conducted through principal component analysis with varimax rotation. So from this, 9 factor was retained, and 70% of total cumulative variance was explained, and the KMO value is, and the battery is significant, and it is adequate. And the confirmatory factor analysis or the measurement model is very important to check the validity and reliability of the instrument and to check the unidimensionality of the construct. So the reliability was checked through composite reliability and Corombach alpha, so it meets the standard. And validity was checked, the content, the convergent and discriminant validity was checked through the confirmatory factor analysis. So as you can see, the results, the average variance extracted was meets the standard, and the discriminant validity, the average variance, the maximum variance shared value is less than the average variance extracted. So it provides discriminant validity as well as the convergent validity. And the overall measurement model or the fitness, the first order measurement model and second order measurement model or the higher order model, it meets the standard, the normed chi-square, the goodness fitness index, the comparative, the Turkey, the incremental fit index, the root mean square, error approximation error, the parsimony comparative fit index, all are just meet or satisfactory the recommended value model. So when we see the structural model, it also all assumption of structure accuracy model has been also checked and it meets the assumptions. So this structural model is connect the proposed exogenous and endogenous latent constructs in order to predict the hypothesis causal relationship between the constructs. So it meets the standard or structural model, the recommended value. This is the result. The hypothesis results of green practice with environmental performance. As we can see this structural paths, green practice with environmental performance and operational performance is in positive, but it is insignificant. The p-value is insignificant. So this is the structural path, green practice with environmental performance and operational performance. So the standard estimation coefficient is positive, but it is significant. So the hypothesis is not supported. So this structural path, the path coefficient, green practice with latent environmental and operational performance. So the result reveals that the implementation of green practice has positive but insignificant effect on both environmental and operational performance. Actually, the reason behind for this insignificant result is maybe because of most of the fact that the firm in developed country like Ethiopia is still in the early stage of the adapting green supply chain management. The adoptions of green supply chain management is in the early on the infant stage. Because of that, the effect of this practice has not fully been realized in Ethiopia context. The challenge of green supply chain management practice while implementing green practice, the first one is lack of customer awareness toward this green practice, lack of appropriate technology that is needed to implement practice, cost of implementation for green practice, as well as lack of skilled human resource professionals has been identified as the major challenge while implementing green practice. So what are the major findings in this research? Actually, the first finding is government and senior management pressure are important driver for Ethiopia laser industry to adopt green practice, while whereas employees and competitors are not important driver to laser industries to implement green practice. So we can conclude that Ethiopia laser industry has experienced both internal as well as external, because the internal one means the senior manager and external one is the government. As the other finding is Ethiopia laser industries has significantly initiated implementing the practice in terms of internal environment management, eco-design, green manufacturing, green packaging, investment recovery. Whereas green distribution, cooperation with customers, reverse logistics practice with low-level practice. So we can conclude that Ethiopia laser industry has or in the early learning stages or infant stages of green practice. So the Ethiopia laser industry shows low levels of green supply chain management implementation. The same analysis of structure accuracy model analysis reveals that green practice has positive but insignificant effect on both environmental and operational performance. So the finding leads to the conclusion that Ethiopian leather industries are under pressure to take green practice into consideration, and their initiative did not lead to improvement in environmental and operational performance. Lastly, the cost of implementation to green supply chain management, lack of customer awareness towards this, lack of qualified human resource professionals were major challenge in implementing green practice in Ethiopia leather industry. The recommendation, the first recommendation is government has played, as you know, significant or critical role in encouraging and stimulating leather industry to consider and implementing green practice. Therefore, the government can increase their scale of green practice by taking steps, making environmental regulation more stringent in line with the same in developed countries. And secondly, as the finding shows that the implementation of green practice has no significant effect on both environmental and operational performance, but this study recommends it should be emphasized because the implementation of this leads to, when we implement the green practice in all aspects of supply chain, we can bring both environmental and operational performance. So beginning with the procurement of raw material up to the design, manufacture, packaging, distributions, up to the end of life disposal. By doing this, it's likely to perform better environmental and operational performance. So implementing green practice, it has positive effect. So we must emphasize in this implementation. And the study emphasizes that senior manager support is very important in exerting green supply chain management in Ethiopia leather industry. So this study recommends, in order to promote and minimizing the barrier of green supply chain management practice, the Ethiopia industry top management should continuously pay attention to environmental improvement of leather industries. And there must be clear and effective communication and well-managed cooperation throughout the organization to make significant contribution towards this, helping leather firms to achieve their objective with respect to green supply chain management practice. This is the recommendation for further research area. So my first one is, as you know, the environmental and operational performance was measured in this study through perceptual data. So further research can focus on actual and more objective data on environmental and operational performance. Second, my suggestion is based on geographical location. This study focused on Ethiopia. So further research can work on different geographical area in East Africa or other they can conduct on the same topic. And finally, this study is focused on leather industry, so further research can do on different sectors like construction, mining, textile, and cement. They can do on this area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abtamu, for the interesting presentation. I think Adam is back. Adam, you can start and continue presenting from where he stopped. And we'll have a discussion afterwards, after having Adam's presentation.
Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. So let me start from the place I stopped. So there are two sides of the story. The foreign bank entry into Ethiopia or into the economy has positive and negative sides. The positive side is accumulation of capital, efficiency, the competition will be intensified into the economy and so on. But in the other part of the story, when foreign banks come into the economy, the domestic financial market might get destabilized. There will be a hit and run strategy by these foreign banks. They come to the country, they invest, and when the thing happens, they pull out all the resources they have into their home country. That has also a negative impact on the long-term growth of the economy. So if you look at the 2008 financial crisis, this happens in many countries. So in Southern African countries, the literature on effects of foreign banking on economic growth is very small in volume, and they have no clear-cut results. What are the effects, positive or negative? Which one outweighs, and so on. And there is also little rigorous there is methodological gap in conclusive results on cross-country empirical evidence on the relationship between foreign bank entry and their effect on the economy. So generally, the reluctance of some African countries to allow their financial to banks, the inconclusive results we are noticing in various studies that focus in sub-Saharan African countries. The small volume of literature and the methodological gaps are some of the motivating factors behind this study. It will be also used as a very important tool for policymakers in Ethiopia before they decide the full or the partial liberalization of the financial sector in the country. So the objectives of this study, or in light of the existing debate regarding the efficiency of liberalizing restrictions on foreign banks, this paper offers some evidences on direct effect of foreign bank entry on economic growth, effect of foreign bank entry on bank sector efficiency, effect of foreign banks on stability, and it might also give important implication for policymakers in Ethiopia. So the data set include 30 sub-Saharan African countries that globalize banking sector, and 13 sub-Saharan African countries that do not. So a total of 43 countries are included in the study, and they're listed here. So Ethiopia is one of those countries that do not globalize banking sector so far. So the bank scope database is the main source of bank level variables such as net interest margin, total assets, overhead costs, and before tax income. So the main source of information for this study is bank scope database. But other data are also collected from World Bank, World Development Indicators, and the International Monetary Fund. The data frame covers from 2000 to 2015, and some of the values that included in the study are gross domestic product, per capita gross domestic product, inflation, real interest rate, and some other proxy variables of banking stability and banking efficiency. So the general method of momentum instrumental variable estimation method was applied in the study because it has some advantage over other models that used for final estimation, which includes advantages include it controls for endogeneity problems. One of the main problems we face when we deal with panel data, omitted variable bias, measurement error, and observed potential heterogeneity. So this JMM is a position to control this. And it also reduces a small sample size that characterize the first difference JMM. So basically we use a second step JMM in this study. So to apply JMM to the following system of question estimated, if you see the right-hand side, we have foreign bank share and its effect on economic growth. So foreign bank share, when we say the country's banking sector is foreign owned, when more than 50% of the asset is owned by foreign investors. So what will be the impact of the increase in these foreign banks presence in the country on economic growth is simply depicted in this equation. So there are some other values which potentially affect the growth, not only the foreign bank entry. So they are controlled, like the GDP per capita, the initial GDP per capita, the inflation, the interest rate at the same period might affect the growth of the economy. So they are controlled. To see the net effect of foreign bank share in the economy and its impact on economic growth. And the rest of the parameters are measured. So this one is for the effect of foreign bank share on banking efficiency indicators. This is to see the indirect effect of foreign banks on the economy. In the indirect effect, we are not directly measuring the effect of foreign bank share on economic growth, but first we measure foreign bank share effect on efficiency, foreign bank share effect on stability, and in the second step we see the link between stability and efficiency variable they have on economic growth. All in all, our interest in the direct and indirect measurement is to see the effects of foreign bank presence in the economy on the long run and short run economic growth of the economy. So to check the validity of the instrument, we have used two tests, Sargan test for over identifying restriction if there are, and the second order serial correlation correlation test. So the foreign bank, if you look at these descriptive results, it showed that the level of countries, the level of foreign bank presence in each countries. If you look at the Mozambique, for example, 98% of their asset is for their foreign banking sector asset is owned by foreign sectors. But if you take Mauritania, Sudan, and other, the foreign bank presence is only 6% and 12%. So that some countries have high level of presence of these foreign banks, and some countries have low. Ethiopia will not include this because so far there is no policy that allow foreign banks presence in the economy. So looking at some descriptive results. So here we have three parameters. We are looking at Ethiopia. We are looking at countries who do not allow foreign banks, and those countries who allow foreign banks. So we are seeing the in comparison of Ethiopia with those countries who have foreign banks and those who do not have foreign banks. So on average, in bank globalized countries, when we say bank globalized, those countries who allow foreign banks, 21% adults access to bank accounts. Their access is measured by ATM users, around 100,000 adults, firm using the financial investment services, bank account subscribers, and so on. So if you look at one of that, on average in bank globalized countries, 21% of adults have bank account. But on the other hand, in those non-globalized countries, only 12% adults have bank accounts. And when you come to Ethiopia, only 9% of adults can access to bank accounts. This shows that the level of bank access, which is low in Ethiopia compared to non-globalized and globalized sub-Saharan African countries. When more banks enter into the economy, the bank service will be increased to 1%, as we see in this. But in all proxies of bank debts, globalized countries have better bank debts performance than non-globalized countries. Ethiopia is one of the non-globalized countries. And the banking efficiency, which is measured by bank net interest margin, and so on. So here we are clearly that the performance of globalized sub-Saharan African countries recording high bank efficiency than non-globalized sub-Saharan African countries, for example, Ethiopia. So this one shows the banking competition level. As more and more banks, the total banking sector asset is not only concentrated in few banks. If you look at the 5 bank asset concentration in open sub-Saharan African countries, it's 86%, which is relatively low than other countries. If you look at Ethiopia, the first 3, 4, up to 5 banks almost control 95% of the asset. If you look at the commercial bank of Ethiopia alone, its capital is more than 500 billion Ethiopian birr. And if you look at other banks in combined, other 18 commercial banks combined, their share might not exceed like 50, 60 billion US dollar. So more than 95% of the asset is only concentrated by one bank in Ethiopia. And that will create some inefficiency problems. But when more and more banks into the economy, this concentration level will be decreased. But by this banking competition criteria, Ethiopia and some non-globalized countries perform lower than those globalized or those who allow foreign banks. Coming to the econometric results. So the coefficients of net interest margin here shows that negative expected time implied that the higher the level of interest margin, the lower the level of economic growth. In Ethiopia, the interest margin is higher. The lending and the deposit interest rate in Ethiopia is relatively higher compared to those countries who are low foreign banks, which is one of the indicator of low efficiency. When we more and more banks into the economy, the the net interest margin will lower, which is depicted by this negative sign. And that means the allowing more banks into the economy, for example, into Ethiopia, will lower the net interest margin, and it has an opposite impact on economic growth. Positive sign of banks' profit, as we see from this table, may be expected if we take higher profits are an indicator of higher level of financial activities. Sign of the foreign banks' asset share is positive and statistically significant. Foreign banks play a statistically and economically significant direct role in these countries who are low foreign banks by improving growth rates through rising efficiency in domestic banks. You see, when more and more banks into the economy come into the economy, we have better expertise, the know-how and experience will increase, the loan level available in the economy will also increase, which is one of the forcing factor for efficiency. So all in all, when more banks enter into the economy, they have positive direct impact on the economy, through which works through rising efficiency. And the indirect effect is also the same thing. Net interest margin has a negative effect on growth, indicating that a higher efficiency may improve GDP per capita in Ethiopia. Sub-Saharan banks' costs are associated with GDP per capita growth. This may be explained by the spillover effect between foreign banks and domestic banks. There will be expectation of spillovers from foreign banks to domestic banks. Higher profit indicates also here has a expected sign if higher profits are taken as evidence from financial activities. So coming to the conclusion, so the descriptive evidence suggests globalized sub-Saharan African countries have better banking service access, depth, stability, and competition than non-bank globalized sub-Saharan African countries. But pointedly, Ethiopia, as non-bank globalized country, showed very low performance in bank penetration, depth, efficiency, and competitiveness as compared to bank globalized sub-Saharan African countries. This is primarily shown in the descriptive results. When we look at the direct effect, foreign banks play statistically and economically significant direct role in improving the growth rate through rising efficiency. But the indirect effect has been measured in two steps. So first, foreign assets share on efficiency and stability values. The net interest margin return on bank assets are negatively related to foreign banks asset share as expected, indicating that efficiency rises with higher asset share of foreign banks. And in the second step, we see the link between efficiency and stability values and growth. Here, foreign banks entering into the economy has positive effects by improving efficiency, but they have unexpected negative effect by destabilizing the banking sector in the economy. When more and more banks enter into the economy, the stability of the banking sector, as we saw on the quantitative results, decreased by 0.01. Show that they might destabilize the domestic economy. The stability will decrease by 0.01%. So descriptive and econometric regression results show the importance of globalizing bank sector in Ethiopia and other sub-Saharan African countries. The empirical results support the issue that greater bank improves economic growth directly and directly through improving efficiency. However, foreign banks will reduce economic growth indirectly via increasing bank fragility, the instability we are talking about before. Thus, the results may suggest policymakers in Ethiopia to remove liberalization restriction on foreign banks, but they should regulate them to be disciplined. Thank you very much. This is my presentation.
Thank you, Adam, for making it a reality, despite the problem that you have faced. Now, I think I'll open the room for discussion. We had 3 papers presented in a row. The first presentation was on the institutional gap that Ethiopia experienced in trying to realize the Sustainable Development Goals, and it was presented by Abiot in a very nice manner. He presented 3 pillars, the social, economic, and environmental pillars of Sustainable Development Goals, and how the institutional arrangement in terms of the investment law is missing, and unless that is filled up, he argued that it cannot be, achieving the sustainable development goal will not be a reality. And Adam tried to present the link between allowing foreign bankers and economic growth in Ethiopia. And he has presented rigorously by using some quantitative tools as to how allowing foreign bankers to operate in different African countries may contribute to economic growth, both directly and indirectly. And the third presentation was by Dr. Atam from Debre Marcos University. He examined the green supply chain management, what are the drivers, and how practicing green supply chain management may affect organizational and operational performance. And after saying this, I will open the room for discussion now. So try to raise your hand, and then I will allow the discussion to go for 20 minutes maximum. Dr. Muladam, you can start. And dear presenters, try to note down the questions that are relevant to you, and I will give you a chance at later stage. Dr. Muladam, then Dr. Malaku. You can start, Dr. Muladam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maru. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I would like to say thank you to the organizer, Rakmo, and Dr. Maru for giving this chance. I have some comments and questions for the three presenters. The first comment and question will go to Abiot from Salali University. Abiot, thank you very much for providing information regarding the investment environment. You told us already the impact of this investment environment in Ethiopia due to gaps in the legal framework. For example, you talk about its impact in job creation, in technology transfer, in terms of wage. You talk about the low wage, human rights violation, and also land grabbing and other issues. And finally, you came up with some 7 ways of improving the investment environment, which may lead toward this inclusive and sustainable development. But when it comes to academic research, academic endeavor, the academic people are really skeptical about the data sources, the methodology that researchers use. I didn't hear about the data source, about the methodology, about the validity, the reliability, because you have a number of generalizations that you told us, okay? And also you came up with the 7 ways of improving the investment environment that can lead toward this inclusive and sustainable development. Therefore, Abiy, could you please tell us about the scientific and rigorous methodologies that you have gone through while you are trying to come up with such kind of recommendation and 7 ways of principle, even if there is any way of, for example, leaving the methodological part in legal research, you may also explain that to us. Thank you. And with regard to the green supply chain management that was presented by Dr. Habtamu, it's a very nice academic endeavor. I know how rigorous it is to apply the structural equation modeling and to come up with such kind of result, and I have thank of words for that. But Dr. Habtamu, if you have if you came up with good experience of other countries that Ethiopia and the sector that you have tried to investigate can learn, you may tell us the good experiences that some developing countries have came up with in applying this green supply chain management, not only in the desert industry, even in other sectors. The last presenter, Adam. Adam, also, thank you very much for such kind of rigorous academic inquiry. I have only one point, that is, you have applied the JMM and you came up with a very nice and interesting result. Then your result finally shows that liberalizing the financial sector appears to be instrumental in raising efficiency, okay, on one hand. And on the other hand, it has its own impact of destabilizing already the banking sector, the financial sector, especially when it comes to developing country. Then, since you are an expert in this area, since you have tried to address a number of issues from sub-Saharan African countries who opened and who closed already their gate toward this liberalization of this financial sector, then when we bring already this issue into Ethiopia, okay, we have on one hand raising efficiency of the financial sector, and the other one is if we opened already the financial sector to be globalized, then we have some 16, 17 bankers, but they are very weak, as he told us. If we total, for example, the asset of the 16 or 17 private bankers, then they are outweighed by the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia. Then, at this juncture, if we allow, for example, if Ethiopia allow or the liberalization of the financial sector, then which effect will accrue? Is it raising the efficiency gradually, or is it swallowing or destabilizing the banking sector or the infant one? Thank you very much, Dr. Maro. I think I have taken a little bit more minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flota. Dr. Malaku, you can take the chance. Try to be very precise, all right?
Thank you, Dr. Maru, for giving me this chance. Hello, everybody. How are you? Actually, I have 2 points directed to Dr. Aptamu and to Adam. Actually, they are not questions. I need some kind of reflection from them. It's not question, actually. I need some kind of reflection. So concerning Dr. Aptamu's topic, I think it's very interesting topic. It's very timely and very hot issue currently. So in that regard, he talked about the green practices in the leather sector. So from this, I think we have to have some lesson. We have to draw a lesson from other countries. So can you tell us what are the good practices conducted by other countries so that Ethiopia can draw a lesson from these practices? Do you have some kind of knowledge or information regarding the practices of other countries in green practices in the leather industry or in every industry sector? So I need your reflection in that regard. Dr. Aptamu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Your reflection, actually, it is not a question. The second point goes to Adam regarding foreign bank entry on economic growth. I know from your discussion, or normally I can feel that Ethiopia is non-bank globalized country. Am I right, Adam?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So where are we now currently? There is some kind of movement in that regard. So where are we Have you referred the latest material, or have you have some information from the concerned bodies regarding our path in this regard? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Maru.
Thank you very much. Yes. Please raise your hand so that I can.
I'm raising my hand. Did you get me? Can you see me, Maru?
Yeah, I can see you, but raise your hands so that we can communicate.
Yeah. No.
And take the chance, Dr. Maru.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maru. I have not a question, but still I want to get information from Dr. Abtamu. Dr. Abtamu used questionnaires to collect data. But did you get any document which deals about green accounting system of the leather companies in Ethiopia? That means environmental or green accounting. Companies with in their revenue and expense, did they include it? Resource management and environment impacts that are practicing, or whether they are practicing and including that one. That I want to know. Thank you very much.
If time allows, we'll go for the second round, but let me add some issues from my part. My comment is seeking for more explanation from Dr. Abtamu. One of your objectives was to examine the drivers of what we call green supply chain management. And one of your drivers, which is tested by way of hypothesis, was customers. And I think the sign was negative. And it was my expectation that the leather sector is one of the sectors which is polluting very much the environment. And customers really complain about the pollution coming out from the leather sector industry. So I don't know how that sign became negative. Who were asked? My question is, whenever you say customers, whom did you ask? If you are asking the community members who are experiencing the negative impact of leather sector by way of what we call pollution, then they would have rather exerted much pressure, and the practice should be more of adopting green supply chain management. So how the sign becomes negative? And for Adam, from your estimation result, especially how efficiency is affecting economic growth, I saw that real GDP is negative, the sign is negative. So if it is negative, how you reported that it has a positive effect on economic growth, but your regression results show that it has a negative sign. So I couldn't get why you reported that way. And you have comments and some questions from three speakers, from Dr. Muluadam, Dr. Malapo, and Dr. Ondumage. And I added some from my part. Now I will give the chance to Abiod to reflect, all right? Abiod, you can take the chance. If you forget, I will remind you, all right? Abiod?
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the question and the comments. I think one of the questions that was forwarded to me is as regard the methodology and source I used. So we know I have done legal research, which is unique from the other discipline in terms of research methodologies. In law, there are two types of research methodologies: doctrinal and non-doctrinal legal research. So when we say doctrinal legal research, it's all about analysis of law. In doctrinal legal research, the researcher analyzes the laws, find gaps in laws, compare the law with the law of one country with the law of the other countries, and recommend for ways of filling the gaps in laws, if any. But in doctrinal, non-doctrinal, or social legal research, we assess implementation, the way it impacts the society. So here, social legal research, the non-doctrinal research is also called social legal research. Here, social legal research is similar. We import the methodology from the other discipline, from social science, like interview, questionnaire, any other tool may be used. But for non-doctrinal legal research, it is purely legal research, and hence that is a methodology that I have used for my research. I analyzed the gaps in our laws. I found laws. I make a comparison with the laws of South Africa and the laws of even international standards, principles, and the guidelines. So I used purely doctrinal and the comparative legal research, with which you may not be familiar. Only the people scholar from the law discipline can understand, I think. So as regards sources, I have used two kind of sources, both primary and secondary sources are used. Primary source like laws, international instruments like Convention, Human Rights Convention, and these laws are used, and primary secondary sources are various literatures are reviewed. So these sources are cited in footnote, as footnote in our in law. We use footnote citation, and that is why I didn't display it on the slide. So I think these are the basic questions that is forward for me. Thank you for the.
Thank you. Adam?
Okay,
Adam,
thank you very much. Yeah, I think you can hear me. Yeah, could I continue?
please address the questions raised from the different participants.
Okay, thank you very much. Important and very informative questions were raised from the participants, and I don't want to argue on most of the comments. I will accept them as they are. But let me give some clarification on some of the points. Regarding Muluadam questions, it is, by the way, a very important question. We are noticing that there is a huge difference between the private banks in Ethiopia, the 18 maybe private banks in Ethiopia, and the commercial bank of Ethiopia. The commercial bank of Ethiopia's asset is 10 times higher than the commercial bank's asset combined, which showed that much has been done, much has been left before allowing foreign banks. As Muluadam said, what will be the trend? What will be happen if we allow foreign banks now in Ethiopia, giving those gaps, those situations? Are they going to swallow by these foreign banks and so on? So all these possibilities are on the table. You see, we have a very big gap between all commercial banks combined, which their capital assets is 50 billion Ethiopian birr, and the commercial bank more than 500 billion Ethiopian birr. There is a huge gap between private banks and commercial bank of Ethiopia. There is a huge difference between private banks also. If we look at a recent bank which is under formation, he managed to sell more than 6 billion Ethiopian birr paid asset, and a promised of 8 billion Ethiopian birr asset. You see, this new bank, before going into operation, he's managed to sell 6 billion Ethiopian birr share, or it managed to form that much capital. But if you look at other banks, other private banks, you can name them most. The only bank who has a better asset is Awash Bank, which is not exceeding 5 billion over 20 years. And if you look at other banks, their capital asset is not exceeding 2 billion Ethiopian birr, 2.5, 2.3. So there is also a huge gap between these banks under operation, which capital is not exceeding 2 billion, and a new reformed bank which managed to sell 6 billion. You see, giving those differences between newly formed banks and existing banks, between private banks and foreign commercial bank in Ethiopia. And one thing is left here, there is also a huge capital expertise and other indexes difference between domestic banks in Ethiopia and foreign banks. If you see Barclays, which is a UK-based bank, its capital is its expertise, its knowledge, and everything is much higher than domestic banks in Ethiopia. So, giving all these differences, as Mullah Adams mentioned, allowing foreign banks into Ethiopia might destabilize the economy. The whole banking sector might collapse the very next day. So one of the negative argument here is an infant industry argument. Most of the banks in Ethiopia, whether you say it private or government, like Commercial Bank Ethiopia, they are infant compared to foreign banks like Barclays. So thinking into understanding this infant industry argument, allowing foreign banks in Ethiopia, as Mullah Adam expects, they might be swallowed. There might be the possibility of collapse. So in a series of liberalization and privatization measures should be taken. Let me explain one. We have to combine, other banks to make some, to increase their capabilities. If you combine most fragmented banks in Ethiopia, their capital, their knowledge, their competitiveness will be increased. So those measures should be on the table before allowing foreign banks. But if we allow without considering that, there will be a possibility of collapse, as Mullah Adam mentions. Regarding Dr. Mulatu's question, where are we now? What is the current status regarding the foreign banks? I know that government FTP is very interested. He is very ambitious to privatize, even to liberalize the foreign bank sectors in the last 30 years. You see, we have no any private banks before 30 years, but we have now 80 of them under operation, and we have maybe a dozen of them under formation. So there are changes, you see, from no private banks to now private banks. Still, the government is ambitious to liberalize further the banking sector to allow foreign banks. But if you look at that, that is a trend over the last years, and particularly the trend in the last 3 years regarding the homegrown economic reform agenda, which is the new economic strategy the country is partially adopting after the GTP2 ends in 2020. The government is trying to adopt the homegrown economic reform agenda. In that one, liberalization, the banking sector, or banking sector in particular, in financial sector reform in general, is one of the central point in the homegrown economic reform agenda. And also the Prime Minister setting up a committee which is responsible for privatization and liberalization. So these are some of the trends now. The government is ambitious, is ready to liberalize. For that, he's setting up a committee, and that is the status. But from my understanding, all these measures are not enough so far to allow foreign banks. As we said, there are a series of negative sides allowing foreign banks, and if you allow them, all the commercial and private banks will run out of business. So setting up a committee, including as a reform in the homegrown economic agenda, is not enough. For example, a study like this one, which focuses on foreign bank, what is the relation to foreign bank and economic growth are important. I didn't see such kind of studies conducted in other universities or other research centers. These committees, the people responsible for policy making are also should gather studies like this one and use as a policy input. We are not only studying the economic impact of foreign bank entry, but it is multidimensional. We have to look at the cultural effects, the political effect, because when foreign banks come into the economy, they might have some political agenda behind, or they might have other agenda. Allowing foreign banks into the economy has a multi-dimensional effect on the economy, on the political side, on the social, on the culture, and so on. So those should be studied well, extensively, and sent to those policymakers to use as a policy input. But the current status is that government is very ambitious and is included it in his homegrown economic reform agenda. Maybe this reform agenda is not fully operational due to some problems. Regarding Dr. Maru's question, here the foreign bank share has a positive direct effect on economic growth. When you look at FBS, the foreign bank share, it has a positive percentage impact on economic growth. But when it comes to the indirect effect, you see here in Ethiopia, the lending and the saving interest rate has a huge gap.
Adam, for interrupting, but
yeah.
In one of your tables where you presented the efficiency impact on different indicators of performance like interest rates, inflation, and real GDP, all are negative. So my question is, the efficiency is bringing negative impact on real GDP of the economy. That was on your result. So if that is the case, allowing banks will damage the economy more, although it's going to bring stability in terms of reducing inflation, right? But you conclude that it has a positive effect, while your result is something else. That's my question.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. So let me explain this example. I think that's the last question. So the lending and the interest rate in Ethiopia has a huge difference, like 8%. So when banks enter into the economy, this range is expected to be lowered from 8%. When you deposit money into bank, you are paid 6%, but when you are going to apply for loan, you are charged 14%. So there is a 8% net interest margin in Ethiopia, which is one of the indicators of inefficiency in the economy. So when more and more banks enter into the economy, this gap is expected to be lower. This gap is expected to be lower. When this gap is expected to lower, the GDP will be expected to be higher. So the gap, this 8% gap, is lowered when more and more banks are entering the economy, which is represented by negative sign, and that negative sign has a positive impact on economic growth. So that is the indirect impact of foreign bank entry into the economic growth. Negative sign shows the margin is getting lower and lower, and it has a positive impact on economic growth. So here we have looking those negative results for that reason. The net interest margins are lower, negative, so it has a positive effect on economic growth. So here the effect is working indirectly. As you see on the table, it is not to show the foreign banks has negative effect on economic growth, but foreign bank entry into the economy has a lowering effect on efficiency, and that has positive impact on economic growth. So between foreign bank share and GDP here, we have efficiency indicator called net interest margin between. That is the reason behind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now I give the chance to Dr. Altabu, and two of the comments are common. I think why you didn't include experience from other countries. This was a comment, I think, which is constructive, and we can address the other issues, Dr. Altabu.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Maru, for your facilitation, and thank you for all your comment and suggestion. Actually, I will incorporate the best experience or other business experience in another review or article review. Actually, the best experience what I found is in developed countries like Japanese and Italy, Germany. They have a good experience in implementation of green practice in auto sectors or these sectors, so they do have a good experience. But what we should learn from these countries is actually the first thing is we must go well beyond monitoring. What we emphasize in developed country is only monitoring, the implementation of monitoring. So we must align the visions of sustainability supply chain management into, we must align with organizational goal and objective. So this is the first learn what we learn from other countries, and we must integrate supply chain management sustainability as a core business practice. What they did in other countries is they align sustainability issue as the core business practice, and they align the sustainability issue in the organizational goal and objective. This is what I recommend. And we must create awareness for customers to buy environmental friendly products. This is what they did in other countries. Actually, the other question from you is why customers is negative effect. Actually, most literature shows customers have a good pressure in, or have important pressure in the implementation of green practice. But what I found is it is negative. So this is also my question. But when I refer different literature, actually the possible reason is, you know, in a developing country, consumers desire low costs or low prices in the products. So manufacturers have and reducing their interest in the adoptions of green practice because of customers prefer low practice, because practicing green practice is huge investment, or initially it requires huge investment. Because of that, most companies, they prefer just practicing without applying the environmental friendly operation or green practice, because customers prefer low practice or they desire low costs in the products. Because of that, manufacturers have and reducing their interest in the green practice. This is a possible reason for negative effect.
Dr. Altam, in that case, you have to operationally define the customers, all right? My understanding was customers include those hosting communities, employees, and those buyers of the products of laser manufacturing companies, all right? So in your case, you consider only those buyers of laser manufacturing firms. So in that case, it's not a surprise that you get a negative result. But if you have included community members who are hosting those laser manufacturing firms, since they are experiencing the negative effect of what we call pollution, they would have pressured those companies to include better environmental management practices. So I think you have to operationalize who the customers are, right?
Okay.
And I think one
more question. Did you get any document regarding to green accounting? Actually, I didn't get any documentary related to green accounting practice in Ethiopia laser industry. And my research is not also focused on this green accounting practice. This is the other limitation. So I have already forwarded as a suggestion for further researcher to incorporate this green accounting in the further research.
Okay, for the interest of time, I'm not going to hold a second round of question and comment session. I would like to thank all the three presenters for the excellent work and excellent presentations you have made. And thank you very much. And I'll move to the second session. And the second session, the first presenter is Mahapav from St. Mary's University. You can share the slide and you can start presenting for the Mahapav. I think he's around. I sent him also a message. Mahabo, are you around? Sanait, can you figure out if, yeah, I can see him.
Yeah, he's with us. I think let's give him a minute. Yeah, he's start sharing his screen.
Hi, sir.
Okay, Mahabo, you'll have 15 minutes for presentation, so that we'll have ample time for discussion. Just tell us the very basic issues of your paper. You can start.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's loud enough. We can hear you.
I am Habba Alamu from St. Mary's University. The title of my research is Adoption of IFRS in Ethiopian Financial Institutions, Prospectus, Challenges, and Level of Implementation. The contents that will be covered are introduction, statement of the problem, research questions, significance, methodology, key findings, conclusion, recommendations, and direction for future use. Future research. We are now living in a world of globalization. Globalization is making system of doing things similar and similar time to time. As a result, IFRS has emerged as a new system of financial reporting, principally for external users, and accepted worldwide as a better business language, more than ever for understandability and comparability among others. These days, IFRS is becoming a mandatory reporting format all over the world. It is because of the emergence of global capital markets and because of the country's need to attract FDI. And it is also because of the requirement of multinational companies, among others. When we come to the Ethiopian experience, Ethiopia had issued a proclamation number 8047 2014 to integrate its financial reporting with the global system. It had imposed responsibilities on publicly traded companies to adopt IFRS. Mostly financial institutions were governed by this proclamation. Due to this and keen interest of the researcher, adoption of IFRS in Ethiopian financial institutions, prospectus, challenges, and level of implementation were conducted. A statement of the problem. As it is common in most cases, developed countries had accumulated a stock of researches in adoption, challenges, and prospectus of IFRS. Pre and post decision of the Ethiopian government to adopt IFRS, a small amount of researches were conducted using the Ethiopian data about benefits, prospectus, opportunities, and challenges of adopting IFRS. Despite the fact that the researcher have conducted on the adoption of IFRS, challenges, and prospectus in Ethiopia and in Ethiopian banking sector, the researcher found that more researches are still on demand because most researches were conducted before the end of the period publicly traded companies to complete the adoption progress allowed by Accounting and Auditing Board of Ethiopia. The researcher believes that there are no adequate studies that investigated the adoption of IFRS in Ethiopian financial institutions with due emphasis on the prospectus, challenges, and level of implementation. Therefore, this study tries to make an effort to bridge the gap through studying the adoption of IFRS by Ethiopian financial institutions. The research is intended to answer these research questions. What is the level of implementation of IFRS in Ethiopian financial institutions, and what are the challenges faced by the Ethiopian financial institutions while implementing IFRS, and what prospectus IFRS implementation will bring for Ethiopian financial institutions. Significance of the study. The study contributes a lot to financial institutions in capitalizing knowledge of prospectus for exploitation, knowledge of challenges for mitigation, and knowledge of the way forward for completion. And it also benefits further researches as being a reference material and contribute to policymakers for development and amendment of policy frameworks. And it also contributes for academic institutions as an identifier of the gaps in their curriculum. Research design and methodology. Research design, the study adopted survey, descriptive research design. Target population, the target population for this study include IFRS implementation team members in Ethiopian financial institutions. Sample and sampling techniques, convenient sampling technique was applied. The total population is from 18 banks and 18 insurance companies, IFRS implementation team. On average, 5 team members in banks and 3 in insurance companies. The total population, therefore, is accounted for or to 144. The study involved 50% of the population in the sampling frame, data source, and data collection instruments. This study used both primary and secondary data source, primary data through questionnaire and secondary data through document analysis. Data analysis procedure, the data analysis was using SPSS version 22. As a computed data then analyzed using descriptive statistics tools, frequency and arithmetic mean, then described the arithmetic mean and the frequency values. Findings, response rate, a total of 81 questionnaires distributed, 72 returned, and 70 or 86.4% of them found usable for analysis. Educational background of respondents, all have degree and above educational qualification, so it contributes for response validity. Respondents' work experience, about 86 and above percent worked for 6+ years. Respondents' position, about 83.6% assume supervisory and above positions in their company. IFRS trainings, about 90% of the total respondents attended IFRS training, and 65.6% of the total respondents reported that the training was adequate. Benefits of IFRS implementation. Respondents recognized all the benefits of IFRS implementation. They reported that IFRS contributes in quality of financial statements. It also contributes for government usage analysis, for investors, for reporting entity, and for financial statement users. They agreed on all of these. Challenges, generally respondents didn't face major challenges regarding company specific and attitude related challenges, but major challenges are related to professional associations, education, trainers, auditors, and the like. Levels of IFRS implementation. Respondents assured that all IFRS level of implementation are performed properly. Now, let's come to the conclusion. Some banks started IFRS adoption even before the proclamation. Government of Ethiopia issued Financial Reporting Proclamation number 847/2014 to integrate its financial statements with international standards. This proclamation is applicable to all reporting entities established in accordance with the Ethiopian law, primarily obligating public interest entities to follow IFRS in their financial reporting. Respondents recognized IFRS implementation benefits. Adoption of IFRS enable companies to produce transparent financial statements, among others. Transparency, again, reduces cost of capital through lowering cost of information. It also reduces information asymmetry. Majority of the respondents didn't face major and company-specific IFRS implementation challenges. As to respondents, IFRS implementation challenges are mostly related to professionals and their associations, information technology that complies with IFRS requirements, and markets that provides information for asset valuation. Majority of the respondents didn't, therefore, according to respondents, IFRS should have been implemented earlier in Ethiopia due to the greater benefits it has as compared to the associated problems. With regard to level of implementation, respondents assured that initial level, conversion level, report level, and assurance level activities were performed appropriately. The way forward, to overcome challenges with regard to lack of professional practitioners, trainers, and auditors, and work of capacity building in general, there is an urgent need for all the relevant higher level educational institutions and professional associations to integrate IFRS into their curriculum. This should be followed by increased funding through specific grants by the government for the training of lecturers on IFRS as a way of building human capacity in support of the transition from local GAAP to IFRS. Accounting Society of Ethiopia should involve itself in professional education and or training programs on IFRS for its members in particular and all accounting professionals in general, and possibly accredit all its members on the basis of IFRS compliance. In addition, the Ethiopian government shall assist IFRS adopters with full-scale support and expand the experience exhibited by financial institutions to other sector operators. If the government transcends the adoption activity to other sectors, foreign direct investment to the country might grow up. This in turn could contribute to the economic growth, to economic growth and development, and lower foreign currency access challenges of the country. Future research areas. This study examined only adoption of IFRS, its prospectus, challenges, and level of implementation in Ethiopian financial institutions, with even some limitations, whereas broader scope and never be dealt with one study. Impact of mandatory adoption on quality of financial statements, disclosure and compliance issues, and perceptions and satisfactions financial statement users on IFRS-based reports are topics that can that call for future researches on the international financial reporting standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahabab, for using the time efficiently. Now I call up on Dr. Abraham from Asosa University to present his work in just 15 minutes. Dr. Abraham, you can start.
Dr. Maru, I don't see Dr. Abraham in the Zoom room.
I am trying to search him. He was around in the previous session.
Yes, but he's not with us right now.
Okay, Nibrato, are you ready? Nibrato?
Yeah, yes, I'm around.
Let us use our time. If Dr. Abraham joins back, he will present later. You can share your slide and you can continue.
Okay, can I start now? Yes. Dr. Maru, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but there is a sound track behind.
Sorry?
There is a sound track.
Oh, I can't hear.
Your slide is visible.
I don't know. How can I hear you?
Are you in your office? Perhaps close the door of your office. Maybe.
Can I start now?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Nabratu Kabada, and the topic that I'm going to present is on the determinants of energy choice for domestic use in informal settlements of North Addis Ababa, specifically Yekka sub-city, Orada 12. I will justify why I selected this. Let me start from the background section. Energy is vital for everything like lighting, cooking, heating, and preserving food and other services. But as you know, all sorts of energy are becoming scarce and their prices are rising significantly or terrifically. Informal settlers particularly endure many challenges across the globe, such as insecure rights over land, inadequate and substandard housing, etc., etc. When you come to Africa, 2/3 of Africans do not have access to electricity, and many suffer from extensive power outages, technological deficiencies, and mismanagement. In Ethiopia, the per capita energy consumption is more severe, which is around 100 kilowatt per year. Access is about 58%, and demand rises every year from 10 to 14%, which is less than sub-Saharan African standard, and power shortages rise to 700 megawatts every year. Look, the magnitude of the problem. Currently, even if Ethiopia has a large potential to generate electricity, it generates only about 4,284 megawatts to serve over 117 million people, while exporting 340 megawatts to neighboring countries, particularly Djibouti. And in fact, there is a plan to export to Sudan and other countries. Electric prices are increasing progressively. Availability varies from place to place, especially between urban and rural, between the urban center and the vicinities of the city. The base sites are far from big cities, making expensive to connect electricity. Biomass therefore becomes the major source of energy, and culturally it has no substitute for cooking food. Its scarcity urges them to have fewer hot meals and adopt meals cooked quickly. Besides all this, informal settlement is a growing problem in Ethiopia, caused by housing problem, high cost of living, inefficient land provision, and land grabbing. Houses are constructed on land where occupants, particularly migrants, have no secure tenure, low in quality, inadequate infrastructure, and social services. The electric problem is worse due to illegal and scattered settlement, distance from the electric facility, low electric consumption of the residents, poor capacity to pay fees, and lack of service providers' trust. On the other hand, informal settlement is swelling continuously, that makes the supply of energy difficult and uneven. In Addis Ababa, about 18.3% are informal settlers, facing frequent power interruption, fluctuation, outage, and or supply. People are often seen buying power, electric power that means, from their neighbors. Service often disrupt. Energy problem has become a major source of anxiety and discontent for the residents. Therefore, the objective of this paper is to examine what really determines informal settlers' energy access, energy choice, and analyze the factors determining access to electricity for domestic use, particularly cooking and baking in North Addis Ababa. Methodology, the site selection and sample design, we applied multiple stage sampling technique. First, Woreda Sraulet from Yekka subcity was selected due to the existence of large number of informal settlers and geographically located in the expansion area of the city. Then, in this Woreda, 8 sites and 2,590 informal settlers are identified as sample frame, and 450 households are selected as unit of analysis. In fact, these informal settlers are only recognized by the local administration. There are others. Then 3 sites from the 8 selected using purposive and stratified sampling method as follows. These 3 sites are in Woreda Srau, Kotabe Gabriel, Demamit or Demaka, Hebratamba, and the total informal settlers, some are electric users and others are not, while all of them are informal settlers, 1,083. From this, the sample size is determined by considering various factors that are mentioned here by using this formula. And from these 3 sites, electric users, 220 are selected by applying the formula given upper. Non-users means those who don't have access to electricity, but still they are informal settlers, 221. The proportional sampling method that gave equal chance to each site was applied. For each site, we applied proportional sampling technique. Based on this, the sample respondents from each site is provided as follows. From Kotabe Gabriel, 23 are non-users, 41% are users, 10% from Hemratamba users, 26 from Dumamit non-users are selected. Once electric users were selected randomly, then non-users were drawn using nearest neighbor matching technique. Purposive and snowball sampling were also used when sample households were inexistent and consciously rejected the interview. Method of data analysis applied descriptive statistics and binary logic model to analyze the factor determining households' electric status. The dependent variables of the logic model is electric user status, that is user and non-user. The factors affecting this electric status are demographic and household characteristics, energy source related factors, household food consumption behaviors, and others. It assumes a value of 1 if a household is electric user and 0 for otherwise. And then the probability of households getting access to electric power is estimated using this regression model. Then findings by applying descriptive and the logic model. Some descriptive findings are found. When you see this, adequate and reliable energy source is one factor that affects us, and among those energy sources, firewood and charcoal, because of this adequacy and reliability issues, 67% of households choose it. In terms of price, kerosene is a little bit more expensive. It's found more expensive for the users than any other source. In terms of energy requiring low-cost appliances are very important determinants for informal settlers. Cooking appliances, what I mean. 86% of households prefer, for this reason, firewood and charcoal. In terms of saving labor, in terms of time, and other economic reasons, 95% of informal settlers prefer, again, electric power. Similarly, for the sake of health, safety, and environmental issues, still electricity is found very important. That's what it presents, the analysis. When we see the price of energy sources, 33% of households consider electricity is still cheap and subsidized, and 45% covers cost, which means around 78% is still believe this electricity is relatively better than other source, except this 28%. To overcome the unaffordable electric price, which is among the 28%, 61% of households are even willing to share the electric meter with their immediate neighbors and pay service charges together. 86% of households choose biomass for technological reasons. 95% choose electricity for economic, social, or health and environmental reasons. When you look households' frequency of energy use for baking and cooking, this table shows that 86% of electric users and 99% of non-users bake 1 to 3 times a week using firewood. On the other hand, 97% of electric users, 97% of non-users here, and 68% of non-users cook 1 to 2 times a day using charcoal. Electric users are found using more charcoal than non-users. Based on this data, this brings still uneven distribution of scarce resources. Look, electric users are using more charcoal. This brings uneven distribution of scarce resources that may raise controversies among households. The monthly expenditures data on energy indicates that high expenditure is made for firewood because there are more of them informal settlers. Thus, the average expenditure for firewood is the highest. Shortage and increasing price of fuel wood, lack of access to reliable electric supply characterize this area. Electric users use all energy sources is higher than that of non-users energy use except firewood. All energy sources are highly consumed by non-users. When you look the binary logic model in order to verify whether descriptive findings are valid or not, I try to regress it by using binary logic model, and it indicates that among demographic and household factors, age, education, number of dependents are related to electric use status. But higher income is not found significant in this analysis, but the descriptive data shows that households who are permanently hired have better chance of getting access to electricity in informal settlements. On the other hand, sex, family size, marital status have no relationship with electric users as indicated here in the table. In relation with energy source related factors, look the significant variables that are indicated in the table. Thus, availability and reliability of energy, availability and cost of appliances determine households' electric use status. But high connection fees and electric tariffs do not prohibit householders from electric users. When it comes to food consumption behaviors, the determinant factors that are already identified in the descriptive analysis is that energy choice is influenced by households' food consumption behaviors. For example, biomass is very important to dry and fry cereals, cook cultural dishes such as baking injera, cooking cultural dishes like broth, add the taste and flavor of foodstuffs, and roast and boil coffee. It is very important, it's found important still. Electricity is found necessary based on this data to save labor, time, and it is very clean and healthy source. For the sake of getting food variety, to take energy meals per day, enough meals per day, and cook foods frequently and get fresh foods, 2 or more energy sources are found necessary for the households. Finally, other factors such as suitability of living area, 68% of households are electric users and 50% of non-users are non-users' home is not located in a suitable area and contradicts the urban plan. The suitability of the living area is a very important factor in getting access to electricity. The other one is number of years lived in the area are found very important. The descriptive variables indicate this finding. Shelter type, the shelter condition is again very important, even if that is not indicated or that's not found significant in the logic regression model. Number of rooms, those who own large number of rooms they are found users of electric power. But from this other factors, land ownership or land title, land size, and proximity to electric facility and settlement pattern have no significant impact on electric use status. I think some conclusion. Owing to household socioeconomic differences, all factors do not have equal importance in choosing energy sources and determining consumption levels. Because of this, electric users are found using more biomass while they are still electric users and consume higher amount of charcoal than non-users. Sex, marital status, etc., have no relationship with households' electric access That's our conclusion. But age, education, and all these variables, they play a very significant role in energy choice. Thus, decision makers can consider them. Policy impact, policy implications, providing electricity based on demographic and household features, energy source related factors, and other factors encourage land grabbing. It further exacerbates this land grabbing or unplanned urban expansion, undesirable land use. That is a policy implication. Instead, formalizing informal settlers and supply electricity based on the suitability of the land to the urban plan and proximity to electric facilities found necessary. It's very important. Primarily, formalizing is still necessary. And the third one is revise an affordable and progressive tariffs set indiscriminately for all and provide discounts to households using during off-peak hours and subsidize only the poor is recommended necessary. And lastly, change the food consumption habits that heavily rely on biomass through conducting aggressive awareness creation campaigns, encourage households to use improved cooked sauce and switch to clean energy sources by improving the electric supply. I think these are important recommendations that policymakers can use. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Nibratu, for the presentation. I think Dr. Abraham is not here again. I was trying to switch him and he is on and off. And so we'll continue with our discussion with the two paper presenters. So I give the chance for the participants to raise questions and comments, but try to raise your hand so that I can efficiently moderate and give you chances. Okay, Dr. Misgano, you can take the chance. I see hand is raised. Then Mulwadda, Dr. Mulwadda. Dr. Misgano, you can take the chance.
No, I was actually clapping.
Okay, okay. Dr. Mulwadda, you can take the chance. Can you hear me, Dr. Mulwadda?
Sorry, Dr. Maru. I was muted, okay? Can you hear me now?
Okay, take the chance.
Okay, thank you very much. I thank you both presenters, Mr. Mahabau and Nibratu. I have a kind of question or for the sake of clarification or curiosity for Mr. Nibratu, okay? Mr. Nibratu finally concluded that due to socioeconomic difference, those households who have access to electricity are using more biomass and charcoal than non-users. Then he concluded that this is due to uneven distribution of resources. But I would like to argue on the other way around. Since Nibratu has conducted his study in an area where there are informal settlers, then if, according to the local development plan, according to the structural plan of Addis Ababa, if you are already an informal settler, then you may not be allowed legally to require to have access for electricity or for other utilities, okay, like for example, access to water or other infrastructure, okay. Then in an informal settlement, especially in cities of developing countries, including ours, having access to electricity may allow you to use that only for lighting purpose, okay, not for cooking purpose. That is why your respondents are found to be using more charcoal whenever they are compared with the non-users, okay? Therefore, it may be really important to look for other form of explanation than using the socioeconomic variables or the uneven distribution of resources, because having access to electricity might allow the households to use it only for lighting purpose, okay? We know they used to rent, for example, from those neighbors who have already legally registered ownership to electricity. And if we take the practical aspect here in the city, the cost of using electricity for cooking is less than the cost of using charcoal, okay? This is already the practical. Then if you have some more explanation from your data, Nibratu, you may explain it. Otherwise, this may fail to reflect what is practically existing here in the city. Thank you, Dr. Maro.
Sunlight takes the chance.
Thank you, Dr. Maru. I have one question for Mohapa. It's very elementary question. I mean, like, I might not hear him explain the extent of IFRS implementation in Ethiopian financial institutions. So I just want to know to what extent are the financial sector in Ethiopia implementing IFRS? If you have to put a number like 1 to 5, 5 being maximum, 1 being very low, to what extent are they implementing the IFRS system? This is what I want to know. Thank you. But I want to thank both the presenters, Nibratu and Mapo, for their very interesting presentation.
Thank you, Sanai. Any other participant would like to comment or ask questions? Both presenters. If not, let me add some comments both to Mapo and Nibratu. I would like to back what Sanai said. I was expecting what is the level of implementation of IFRS in those financial institutions in Ethiopia, since that was one of your objectives, but couldn't get in terms of at what level we are in terms of implementing IFRS. I think you promised us to tell us the level, but you couldn't tell us supporting by evidence. And I would encourage you also to come up with different forms of challenges, internal, external, resource related, than simply providing us list of some hearsay sort of challenges, right? And you could have also further given us a kind of rating so that which challenge is more important than the other challenges, so that those practitioners in those financial institutions can address those challenges in a priority manner, because resources is not always enough. And if you have given us such kind of rating, then those practitioners can give much focus to those challenges that are critical. So that is my comment. And when I come to Nibratu, you raised a very important topic, but I found it based on the study is then based on perceptions and objective measurement. Dr. Muladam was trying to argue in that basis. We know that electricity is cheaper than other source of domestic energy source. That's clear. So which type of accessing electricity you are mentioning in terms of those who have access to electricity? With those who have having their own electric meter, or is this those who have access to electricity just for the purpose of lightening purpose by borrowing or by paying some expensive fees from neighbors. This should be cleared, otherwise it will be apparently confusing because electricity is cheaper than other sources of energy. And it is purely perception based because 33% of them said that electricity is cheaper, and 67 and 47%, a bigger proportion of them said biomass and kerosene are cheaper. And I don't agree on this assertion because I think this time in Addis Ababa, whether you live in the suburb or in the city, electricity is cheaper than other source of domestic energy source. And I don't know why you use snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is a type of technique that we use for rare population, and these informal settlers are not rare population, but we can find them if you visit their area of residence. And what is the rationale behind to use snowball sampling? And why use nearest neighborhood matching, which is the technique which you use for impact estimation. I don't know why you use nearest neighborhood matching. And another comment or question is, your variables that you included in the binary logic model, are they inspired by literature? They are not inspired by literature. How you included those variables? I think it's all about the purchasing power that people may use different source of energy. All the variables that you included are not as such theoretically or empirically supported in determining what we call choice of domestic energy source. And I need justification on that. And the policy implications that you draw after your discussion is not something related to your finding, surprisingly, because you said that allowing access to electricity will encourage unplanned urban expansion in the land use, while your study is about what are really the factors behind driving the use of different energy sources. And at the end, you come up with a different policy implication, which is completely unrelated to the objective and the study that we presented. And these are my reflections to both the speakers, and I can give you the chance first to Mabo, then to Wiki. Mabo, try to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. The first question is from Sanai. To what extent IFRS has been implemented in financial institutions? According to respondents, both initial level, operational level, reporting level, and assurance level activities are fully performed, as I already reported. So IFRS is fully implemented in Ethiopian financial institutions, banks, and insurance companies. When I came to Dr. Maru's question, I have addressed a lot of challenges. Challenges are categorized in 15 cases in general, 15 variables, and each variable with some details. Like I have categorized challenges as initial system compatibility and support requirement challenges. And with this variable, there are detailed questions addressed or given to respondents, and respondents gave answers to those detailed questions. And this is a summary of those questions. To see them in detail, you can refer to the questionnaires attached with the paper, but to raise some of them, there is lack of professional personnel with Ifrs knowledge and experience in the company. There is a shortage of limited access to Ifrs expert consultants for adoption, blah, blah. So each has details. And I have tried to address the detail. The entire conclusion I made is not only from these summarized figures, but I have gone to the details, and that detail report took part in my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Okay, Nibratu.
Okay. I think the questions raised by Dr. Muladam and Dr. Maru are in some areas similar, like both of you perceived as informal settlers have access to electricity only for lighting purpose, but that's not the reality. The majority of informal settlers that I found in the research area are using other than this lighting, like for cooking and baking. Even they are officially allowed to get access by the Ethiopian electric utility. Why? I don't know the reason. There are a number of reasons, and in my study, some 51% of the informal settlers are electric users, which means not for lighting purpose only, but for other use as well. That is one thing that has to be well taken. Thus, in this study, when I tried to compare users with non-users, first, I consider those who have directly access from the Ethiopian electric utility, who has got electric connection. And there are still others who are getting electric connection from their neighbors, the service. Thus, this group of households have got the right to use electricity, and others, they don't have, while they have equal status, informal status. What's the logic behind to get access? That was what initiated me to study. The other issue that's raised is instead of raising only these socioeconomic factors, why don't you consider other factors? I tried to consider other factors as well. For example, literature indicates demographic and socioeconomic variables like income, like age, family size, number of dependent families, etc., have been considered by others. But what I tried to do here is I brought this theoretical, empirical studies in the context of informal settlers. The other thing is energy source related factors like availability, adequacy, reliability issues, availability of soft technologies, and appealances for electric appealance and biomass appealance are different. Thus, these are considered. The other thing is consumption behaviors that I considered. Consumption behaviors because of cultural influence, because of these personal needs, preferences, and access to electricity may be affected. Thus, all these things I try to consider them. Lastly, other factors like proximity, geographical proximity to the electric infrastructure, the housing condition and the like are considered. If there are other things, well, I can't exhaustively see all the variables that affect households' electric use and their consumption levels. I can't cover all of them, but I tried to consider these factors. The other issue that is raised by Dr. Maru is why snowball, why nearest neighborhood matching, and the like. Snowball sampling is only applied when, snowball sampling is applied only when the household that is randomly selected is absent or is not voluntary to give an interview. We directly used other methods by another person who replaces this individual. Nevertheless, we strictly applied a random sampling method and purposive sampling method who can have better knowledge, better information to provide required data. That's why I used snowball sampling and nearest neighbor matching is when I select first electric user, the next person must be non-user immediate to that user, non-user. Through this method, we design the sampling process. Respondents are selected in this way. This nearest neighbor matching is used just to select non-users. Users are already selected by random sampling technique. Why I used nearest neighbor matching for non-users, just in the same area, both users and non-users are found. Users means those who fully use electricity. The other thing is that even if electric users have access to electricity, since it is informal settlement area, electricity is not reliable in that area. Frequently it interrupts. There are a lot of periods where power outages are recorded. Because of this, most of the time, even those who have electric counters, electric meters, they are found using firewood and charcoal. That's why their consumption for electricity is less than the consumption for firewood. That's what I observed. And still electricity is preferable according to them. If I have addressed it, that's good. If not, you can raise it.
Okay, if anybody would like to add more questions and comments, I can give some 2 chances.
Dr. Maru. Dr. Maru, I think the snowball sampling and stratified sampling cannot go together. I want to comment on this issue. Nivrato has applied already the binary logistic regression model. And if you use the binary logistic regression model, you can't shift from the probability sampling, that is the stratified sampling, to the non-probability sampling, that is the snowball sampling. Nivrato has used already the snowball sampling to as a mechanism of, as a replacing mechanism, okay? Whenever respondents, the selected respondents are not willing or whenever they are not available, okay? Why don't you use other replacing mechanism? Otherwise, you have to already abandon the binary logistic regression model, okay? If you use regression models, whether it is multiple linear regression, binary, or probit, or logit, or multinomial logistic regression, then your sampling should be done based on the probability sampling technique, okay? You are shifting already from the probability, that is the multi-stage sampling, to the non-probability, that is the snowball sampling. I think this is not allowed as far as my reading is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mulwadam. That is my concern too, but we can share our concern with Nivrato informally as well. And he reflected to his best, and that's why I skipped. Otherwise, yeah, it doesn't mean that we are satisfied, all right? So I give the last chance to Wezeros Nakaj, and we'll listen from the presenters and we'll conclude the the morning session. You can continue with the rest of that. Whether Rosnakesh, do you want to speak to address presenters? I see your hand raised. I think she's not around, maybe, I don't know.
No, she is around, but her mic is not working. Maybe, probably you can come here with Rosnakesh and ask your question.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, you can continue.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to thank all the presenters first. And my question goes to Ato Muhabba. From my experience and from all of us, it is really true that when any new thing is introduced, there is a reluctance to change. But I didn't hear such a problem related with attitude when this IFRS is introduced. Can you please tell us any problem related with attitude in implementing IFRS in your study in the financial institutions? Thank you. I finished my question. Thank you.
Mahapa, you can take the chance and address.
Okay. Thank you very much. By the way, financial institutions were interested and make themselves ready to adopt IFRS even before the proclamation of the Ethiopian government. And few financial institutions totally adopted IFRS before the proclamation. But most of the financial institutions were tried to adopt IFRS following the proclamation by the Ethiopian government. So there is a keen interest of financial institutions to compete themselves with the international practice. So because of that, most of the financial institutions fulfilled the requirements from the side of the company. For example, the questions raised with regard to institutional level support or attitude where the company lacks a strong board of directors expected to decide on strategic and policy issues and undertake regular follow-up on the process of IFRS implementation. So they disagree with this. They reported that they have a strong board of directors that supports with full capacity the implementation process. And the other question was the company's top level management is not committed for IFRS adoption through availing resources and information needed monitoring the conversion work and decide on issues that need their attention. They also disagreed that in a way they showed that the top management's commitment to support the implementation process. So all the questions addressed regarding this institutional level support were answered by the respondents that positively means the institution was totally supporting the implementation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahapal.
Sorry. May Dr. Maru, can you give me one chance, please?
Who is that speaking?
Nebratu. I'm Nebratu.
Okay.
I think Dr. Mulalam has raised snowball sampling and stratified sampling methods do not go together. That's what he told me, but still I didn't get the rationale behind. Snowball sampling is simply to replace those who are absent at the time of interviewing. And stratified sampling is to give equal chance for all informal settlers found in different areas proportionally are located those respondents. And then within each strata, within each group, if there is some individual who has been available in that area for interview, snowball sampling within that strata is applied. So I don't get the contradiction between the two.
The issue is if you want to replace someone who was selected through a probability sampling technique, you have to use from that list another method of replacement, not snowball. If you use snowball, then how you can ensure the independence of the first interview with the second one, right? So it will be non-probability. So I think as far as my knowledge is concerned, that's not acceptable procedure. It should have been replaced using a different procedure. From the list that you have, you can replace the second person, not through snowballing, but through the random sampling technique, right? That's his concern and my concern, and we can discuss from outside this online room, and we can debate further, right? So now I would like to thank all the participants and the presenters for the excellent session that we had this morning, and I give the chance now to Sanait or the moderator, and I thank you all. I have finished my role. So now, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maru. Actually, it's Magdala who is chairing the session. Magdala, if you are around. If not, in the meantime, I would like to announce that Dr. Abraham, which was, I think, the second presenter, he told me that there is a serious internet interruption. He lives in Asosa, so he told me that there is a serious internet interruption and he wants to present in the afternoon. Hopefully he will have a stable, he will fix the internet issue and join us in the afternoon. Okay then, Dr. Maru, thank you very much for your facilitation, chairing the sessions. And all the participants, thank you for your questions, comments, and the presenters for your wonderful and very informative presentation. We will begin the afternoon session at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So after lunch break, we have to come back at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Have a nice lunch. Thank you very much all.
Thank you.